Bazani, Babu Konzile, Wendy Avuma, Ukwayo in the bar, Kawusondela, Andibu Kalele, Awufumina, Uguba in Dombi, Kawusondela, Andibu Shebele, Awufumina, Uguba in Dombi. Yes. That's how we do it here. Welcome to WNHH 103.5 FM, your radio, your community radio station, and dare I say your number one community radio station. This is Thabisa and Friends show. I am here with my co-host today, Mr. Charlie Rich. Thank you for co-hosting with me tonight. I'm so happy today. I've got a wonderful woman from the motherland. I have two wonderful women from the motherland here joining us on this show today to talk about a variety of topics, from COVID-19 to climate change. I can hear my little baby there saying, "I'm here too." I'm here too. I can hear the baby there at the back, wanting to join us. Please join us, baby. You are welcome in this show. And I have also another wonderful local artist here. Her name is Isabella Mendes, who's going to bless us with her sound later on in this show. So yeah, I want to really thank you guys for making the time to be here and joining us on this show today. And thank you, of course, Harry, for always making sure that we get connected and have this platform to bring our voices out there. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. The reason, I will tell you, the reason why I have my co-host today is because of my voice, as you can hear. But I did not want to cancel the show. I absolutely did not want to cancel the show. Let me just put this down because it looks like I'm not wearing anything. I went to a protest yesterday. Man, I want to tell you this. I feel a shift. Because not only did we always know that Black Lives Matter, we just want to make sure that people really, really understand that Black lives matter. No matter how they can pretend that our voices, our lives don't matter, they do. They have always mattered. Black people have always existed and held space and just been visible, but different forces, from political affiliations to supremacists to racists, to all sorts of forms that try to oppress our voices, right? That we are saying that that has to end, and we are tired of having to see Black bodies being showed on our screens every time we turn on social media, we turn on the radio, or we turn on TV. That's all we see. It's traumatizing us, it is traumatizing our children, and it is breaking our homes and communities. So everybody should be enraged at this point in time, because it's far too long. And I want to also just note this. Yesterday was such a pivotal moment in many ways, because I saw a lot of white bodies from the communities coming out and saying enough is enough, and saying that Black lives matter, and saying that this needs to end, and that the police need to be held accountable. And people stood as one. We need more of that. The more visible we show that we are bothered, the more clear we sound that we are bothered by these atrocities. We are bothered by seeing Black innocent men being treated like dogs. We are bothered, the more we come out there to show that Black men don't deserve to be treated the way they are treated. And especially it's always a case of petty crimes as well. You know, petty crimes like theft or things like that. Because it's not necessarily all those cases are people that maybe didn't commit some sort of crime. It's petty crimes, like what happened at Walmart, and they get treated with severe outrage. I mean, aggression. I mean, aggression. So, and then you get people, white terrorists that murder church people in churches, in synagogues. They murder people, and then they get burgers, and they're escorted sweetly into the police vans. It's like, wait, you just did that to a terrorist, but someone was an innocent child bought Skittles and they got shot to death. So I just wanted to make note that yes, again, we are saying Black Lives Matter, and we need the community to join hands and be enraged with the rest of us and make sure that we make the change within our local government, in our states, and hopefully within the whole world. And I'm grateful to see other people in the world standing in solidarity and also saying that enough is enough. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again. I mean, ladies, I mean, Henry is not counted here because he's the one who's keeping us together. But gentlemen, to my co-host here, welcome again. And I'm gonna introduce to you guys my first guest. I don't know if you can hear me well. Can you hear me well with my raspy voice? A thumbs up, yeah. Okay. Great. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to please open up your ears and hearts for my beautiful sisters here. I've got two South African sisters, but I'm going to introduce you, Pramila, first, and then my co-host here will be introducing Otalia. Pramila is an experienced, multi-talented creative who has gained a wide range of experience in film and television during the past 16 years. She directed, produced, and worked as a cinematographer on the documentary Amabele for SABC One. That I remember very well. I was with you in South Africa at that time. The film screened at international festivals around the world, and it stimulated dialogue around ways in which patriarchal stereotypes impact on the mental health of young women. Primera recent experience includes working as a local sound recordist on the documentary How to Steal a Country, as well as providing post-production services for the film. From 2017 and mid 2019, Primera worked on an entertainment news show called The Scoop, which aired on SABC3. Her role on this show included being creative director, inset producer, sound recordist, camera operator, writer, and editor. She currently runs her company, Universal Ubuntu Network. Should I dare and say UUN? I feel like I need to abbreviate that. Providing production and post production services for Uhuru Productions. She has recently worked on a documentary for RT Russia Today, taking an in depth look at unlawful evictions of South African shack dwellers who reside in informal settlements. Primula is a member of the C19 People's Coalition. I think C19 means COVID-19. People's Coalition. Her role as a team member includes working as an investigative journalist looking at the impact of COVID-19 on vulnerable South Africans. That, today, ladies and gentlemen, is Pramila. And do you want to introduce my second guest, and then we can start with our questions for both of you?
Sure. It would be my pleasure to introduce Ortalia Kunene. Thank you so much for being on the show today, and thanks to Thabisa for letting me sit in and co-host. I'm really excited to hear from Ortalia herself, but because I read her bio and she's done so much, and for a young life, a young future star. She's been an activist, a writer. Her journey started out in Soweto, fighting for service delivery issues, mainly along the issue of electricity, for an organization called Soweto Electricity Crisis Committee. And there, again, she really did it all. Media coordinator, documenting stories, protests and community meetings, how we, how the community comes together, documenting it, getting it to the people, getting their voice out there. And then that really transformed into other issues around housing and water, through a number of different organizations that, again, I'd love to hear her comment on. But, I think she spent a lot of time with this organization called The Right to Know, which was, really around empowering women and giving access to information. So
Nice.
how do we get the message out there? How do we make things transparent? How do we end gender violence and create more equity for all of our people? But a lot of her focus has been on climate change, gender inequality, and addressing the issues of capitalism and how they feed to the inequality, particularly in South Africa. So a short bio, and there's so much more in there, but we're really excited to hear more.
We're very, very fortunate to have these two wonderful ladies from South Africa, our motherland. Ladies, this question is going to be both for you, but I will start with Pramila. I just want to get ahead and just start with COVID-19 because it is the issue that is hitting South Africa the most at this point in time, amongst many. But right now, we are all globally united, if I will call it that way, by this one pandemic, which is COVID-19. Pramila, since you are a part of the C19 People's Coalition and being an investigative journalist for them, please let us know what you have found out and how is this impacting our South African people. Prayer?
Okay. You can hear me now.
Can hear you.
Great. Okay, thanks so much for having me. And in terms of the impact, it's really widespread. What I can see is the rates of malnutrition have increased. The number of people who are not getting enough to eat has dramatically increased. This is especially true for people like waste reclaimers, people working in the informal sector, people who are making a living by cooking food and selling cooked food, which was banned during the lockdown. And for people who are generally living from hand to mouth. So malnutrition has been a big issue. It's been a huge impact. And then there have been people who have been evicted. And during the lockdown, there was a moratorium declared on evictions. So government said no one can be evicted during this period, regardless of, their financial issues or anything else. But somehow evictions still happened. And the evictions were carried out by a group called the Red Ants. And this happened in different parts of the country. But the Red Ants are sort of hired demolition group. And, they are also quite poor Black South African men, who get hired to just go and tear down shacks, to demolish houses. And in the process of doing this, one of the evictions that we were looking at, they actually took pretty much all the belongings from many households, everything from clothes to, there were students who lost their textbooks. They took the food from families, even heard of babies' formula being taken and babies' milk. And they actually just also took all the materials. And people observed on the day of the evictions that the materials that were used to build their homes were actually sold on the day. Like trucks came in and, bought the materials for these people's housings. So people became homeless during this time. Obviously there's the actual health impact, and then there's huge mental health impacts that we've seen in the country. The government decided that people should not be allowed to buy cigarettes. They are still currently not allowed to buy cigarettes, but that's caused like a dramatic increase in black market trade of cigarettes. and this means that people are buying, you know, black market cigarettes, which are very toxic, which are worse than, you know, for people's health than the cigarettes you would buy, you know, from more legitimate sources.
Right.
And then also people are buying cigarettes at exorbitant rates. So this means people who are addicts have had to decide, like, will I buy food or cigarettes? And will I buy
Right.
food for my family or cigarettes? So
Because
we've
people
seen
are addicted too,
people
right? Right.
they haven't bought food for their families. The children have gone hungry so that, you know, dad or uncle can keep, you know, sustain like their cigarette habit. And also alcohol, people have had to stop drinking, and you know, people have died from trying to make their own alcohol, their own drinks. There's a lot of mental health impacts as well there with and it's not necessarily that it was a bad idea to stop alcohol, because they were trying to reduce the burden on the health services.
Yes.
But we have seen that there was no support given for alcoholics to get through the time, and you know,
And for
there's been a
people
lot of
who had legitimate
violence.
addiction, right, right. Because yes, I get it. I get it. When there's like people who just want to drink because they just want to drink, and some of them they want to drink because you know they just love a good time, and some not taking this COVID-19 seriously. And then there's people who have addiction issues that actually need services and help. But people with our COVID-19, there are a number of people who have drug problems in South Africa, addiction problems, that don't get the help that they need because there aren't the resources in the townships. There aren't facilities in the townships to help them rehabilitate them and all of that. I'm sorry, Ritabil in my head. I'm sorry. Ortalia, I would like for you to please also add on what Pramila was saying here. How is it in the townships right now with COVID-19?
Um, oh, hi everyone. Let me just switch off my video first. Is that okay?
That's
Because I think
perfect.
I'm finding it a bit problematic. My network is a bit bad, so I think that would be better if I switch here.
That's perfectly fine.
So the biggest problem is the biggest problems that we've been experiencing in the township. I think one of the biggest crises is that the crisis itself of COVID-19 exposed many weaknesses, you know, to this capitalist economy. I mean, South Africa is one of the most unequal society from the rest of the world. So there's so many loopholes that the crisis has actually exposed us to, more
Yes.
especially in the townships. You know, there's now a high gender-based violence crime rate because of the lockdown, because people are now locked in with their violators, you know, which is the biggest problem. And
Right.
now there's an issue of you know, this whole discussion of, you know, protecting the economy and putting the economy first. But the
Right.
biggest problem is
So Talia, you are cutting a little bit. We could hear what you said except for just now. But I think what you said about gender-based violence spiking up is very important and showing. Um, I think we're having a little bit of. Can you hear me? Because if you can hear me, I.
in a very, very bad situation. Let's just look at what happened when to South Africa, you know, and
Yeah, so we're having a little bit of connectivity issue there with Otalia. But what she said, right? Gender-based violence is spiking up right now, and as well as addiction, as Pramila mentioned, that people that are addicted are finding it very difficult to survive within the times of COVID-19. That it becomes now it contributes towards the stresses that we already have in South Africa. So, Pramila, if you can hear me, I don't know if you can hear me there.
Yeah, I can.
So, okay, all right. Taria, you back again? You were cutting off. I just want you to know that you were cutting off, so it was hard to make out what you were saying. So, are you still there?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
I am okay. I'm very sorry. My network is very terrible, unfortunately.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Can I continue from where I left off?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. I was saying that our gender-based numbers have increased mainly because the perpetrators are locked in with their yes. It has increased drastically. Have any measures that are also put in place, right, for people who are also going through abuse. The number of shelters have closed down due to a lack of funding.
Exactly.
And it's a bit of a problem, because I think it's very important for certain measures to be put in place before any lockdown can happen, especially if it's a nation like a nation lockdown. There's a lot of measures where we have a high gender-based violence, high crime rates, where we have a very bad health system. So there's a lot of things that need to be put in place. And I understand that the lockdown was not necessarily to slow down the increase of the COVID-19, but it was supposed to actually put measures in place so that when
So so
then we can handle the spread of infections.
Right.
I think one thing that I also mentioned was it's when it started spreading.
Well, we're struggling to hear you, Otalia. I apologize for that, and I do understand as well about the network, and because it depends sometimes in South Africa which area you're in as well. And so yes, well, thank you, Otalia, for that, and I apologize again to the viewers as well. The way that her sound is not quite audible because of network issues, but I wanted to continue on the things that you've mentioned. You've mentioned. I think our engineer has sent us a message as well. So if you can check that out, Otalia. Pramila, she mentioned funding and the domestic violence right now that has spiked up. And I want to talk about that as well as I want to go into climate change as well, and to understand what the government is actually doing to bring about awareness about climate change in places such as the townships, to make sure that there are programs, and there are programs that can help people understand and help people, have the information they need to be aware of the global climate change that we all have. But touch a little bit on what's happening in terms of, is the government funding these programs in the townships? And I know we have all these different issues like Otalia mentioned. To you, Pramila.
Yeah. So I can't really speak accurately about what's funded and what's not funded. I do know that many NGOs have been having a very hard time operating. And one thing that we didn't actually get to was police brutality during lockdown.
Yes.
And brutality of both the police and the army. So there was a recent quite high profile case, a man called Collins Khoza. He was assaulted in his home. He was at his home and he was having a drink, alcoholic drink. And the army and the police came into his home and they assaulted him and he died as a result of the injuries. And
What's his name again?
that's been, in the media, but there's also been many other cases that we've heard of. And what's been interesting is that people have been saying that the police brutality during lockdown has actually been far less than the
So probably they was talking about the police brutality in South Africa, because when they started with the levels and the lockdown in South Africa, the president had asked for the police to be present and be visible to try to make people stay home, as well as he deployed the army to be on the ground in the townships, and how they went about making sure that people were adhering to the
Hi,
rules.
sorry, I'm back. So sorry about that.
Yeah.
This is a work call. So I was talking about the police and the violence. So apparently there's more violence, and because the media have been everywhere monitoring things, there's been a lot of international media. I think the police have been on kind of better behavior than what like stats say in terms of how they normally behave towards people. So in South Africa, we do have a very high number of people who are killed by police, and there's not really much media attention given to this because it's kind of like it's so normal and we're so desensitized.
Exactly.
And when things are caught on video and get it onto the internet, there can be a lot of attention around it.
Right.
And we did see some photos and images, and there was also like really good media coverage of some of the deaths. I mean, obviously tragic, but the fact that the deaths were covered because of it being the COVID lockdown kind of cast a spotlight on police brutality in South Africa. And also, the army is, there's a lot of people in the army who are, very quick to use violence and humiliation and, to treat people really badly. One of the stories I heard that was really disturbing was of elderly people and homeless people going to collect vegetables from a government building in the CBD. And while they were on their way to take the vegetables to the families and people they were staying with, the army attacked them, beat them, and took the vegetables from them. So that was one of the stories I heard that was quite shocking because, people, there's nothing illegal about collecting food donations and taking food, to your place where you're staying. And
that's just incredibly heartbreaking to hear, because everywhere it seems police and the law enforcement are abusing their power, and they are using it against the same people that put these people into positions of power, be it politicians or be it law enforcement. And I think that it is high time we put these atrocities out there and make sure people are aware of these things that are happening, and calling a spade, and calling out the government of South Africa, because I realize that, like you say, people are so used to, in South Africa as well, like I'm talking especially there, they are so used to policemen behaving that way that no one finds it within themselves, to complain or to stand up for their rights, because we like well, no one is going to do anything about it anyway. But people, they have the right to speak up, whether they think someone out there is not listening or not. Speak up, and thank God for phones, because phones are really revealing what's been happening for many, 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 many years, even here in America. It's just that now we can catch it on real time. That's the only difference, right? So I'm really feeling like, and I feel enraged by knowing exactly what the policemen in South Africa can do. I've been a victim of that in South Africa many times, where policemen have treated me in such an aggressive manner when a situation didn't even need to get to that point. Where they feel like they are above the law. Do you think the government has thought through, you know, about the fact that they've deployed an army to people? And do you think that this policeman and this government is going to be held accountable? Does the government take accountability for their actions?
Well, from what we've seen to date in terms of government taking accountability, no, we haven't seen government, taking accountability for their actions. And there was, at one point, the president said that mistakes were made. I think he implied incorrect decisions were made. But in terms of the army and what the army and the police have been doing, yeah, there has been condemnation, but we haven't really seen, like there being serious repercussions for people involved. And we haven't seen talk of like, how can we fix this problem that we have a police force that it's known to be full of people who behave in a way that is completely criminal and that is violating people's human rights. And in a lot of cases, people are too scared to go and report what happened to them because they're scared that they'll be assassinated or, they'll be tortured if they report. So they feel like the safest thing for them is to keep quiet. In some cases, people will move to a different part of the country if they've been terrorized by police. So, there's a general sense of like that we're dealing with gangsters and people live in fear. And, I can say I heard reports of several people buying cigarettes that were confiscated. They were buying them at police stations or near police stations from police. People also buying alcohol from police. So the police did find ways to benefit during the lockdown. It's
insane. It's very disappointing. It's disgusting. It's truly, insane. And I really, how do you suppose, Otalia, if you are able to quickly add as well, how do you suppose we empower people and make sure and ensure that we keep the government, or we require that the government be accountable for its actions? Like, how does a normal person from KwaZulu Township make sure that they can have their voices heard? And I know you guys are leaders, community leaders in your own rights, in your own ways. How do you suppose people can get out there and mobilize and make sure that they stand together, and even people that are in better privileged places, how do we suppose they can get out there and speak for those who are underprivileged and don't have a voice? How do we encourage and make sure that people do that? Otalia?
We lost Otalia.
I think one thing that I really love is the fact that can you
No, you can type it to me. You can type it on the chat, or you can type it to me on WhatsApp. Type it to me on WhatsApp.
It's actually better if you use the call-in number.
I'm sorry?
It's actually better if she uses the call-in number.
Oh, okay. Otalia, my engineer says it's better if you use the caller number. You can check the chat on your Zoom right now and see what he has sent you. And you can click on that. In the meantime, well, we are on WNHH 103.5 FM, Thabisa and friends. I have my beautiful and wonderful sister here who came at the last minute to come and support and be here on this show. I would love for her, while we are on these very tough conversations and while we are trying to maneuver and try to find solutions and how we can empower people and let people know that they have voices. I would like to call up on Isabella Mendes to please give us a song before we close down because we don't have a lot of time. Unfortunately, we have so much to talk about, but little time. Isabella, can you give us something? And I think after that, I'm going to ask for one last word from Pramila before we close down. Thank you.
Hi, Thabisa. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you for having me on your show. And it's been really, truly eye-opening to hear everything. And I stand with you. I stand with the Black community. And it's heartbreaking to see what's happening. It really is. So it's hard to find the right words to say. So this one song I thought would be fitting. It's a Brazilian song called A Paz, which means peace. And that's what we're hoping for, is that there's some peace and togetherness between our community.
Hey, so yeah, you can hear me, right?
No.
Paz invadiu meu coração, de repente me encheu de paz, como se o vento de tufão arrancasse os meus pés do chão, onde eu já não me enterro mais. A paz fez mar a revolução, invadir meu destino. A paz, como aquela grande explosão de uma bomba sobre o Japão, fez nascer o Japão na paz. Eu pensei em mim, eu pensei em ti, eu chorei por nós. Que contradição, só a guerra faz nosso amor em paz. Eu vim parar na beira do cais, onde a estrada chegou ao fim, onde o fim da tarde é lilás, onde o mar arrebenta em mim, o lamento de tantos ais. A paz, a paz, a paz.
Wow. I can't say. Sorry, I can't know what I say wow, but I couldn't say it. Wow, amazing.
Wow. It's
I will
beautiful.
send you guys the words translated because it's really worth it. I'll post them, the
Please.
Portuguese version and the English version, because it's very fitting for right now, and it's a truly beautiful song.
Wow, please, I would love for you to do that, please. And thank you, thank you a million for doing this in such a short notice and doing a great sport. I really appreciate it. And we are all standing as one here. And I appreciate you trying to figure out ways to find words and ways of action in order to contribute in a way that is actually going to uplift our communities. I'm just going to give one last word because this is about my time for me to leave so that Harry can go and prepare another show. So, but I would like to see if Talia has a way of talking to us. How can people, as a last word, how can people be empowered from the privileged and the not so privileged communities? How can people make sure that the government is accountable for their action? Can you just give us some your thoughts, Talia?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I really like what you said, Thabisa, earlier on regarding the fact that, people have phones. And I think it's one of the most important tools that we can use to completely address the oppressions that are happening in our communities, particularly by the police. I think at some point it was made legal in South Africa to record the police, right? And one of the difficult matters before then was that, police could actually take your phone away if you're recording. But I think it's one of the most important things that we need to spread the word and say, you have every right to actually record the police, especially when the police are doing something illegal, so that later on we can actually hold them accountable. I mean, let's just look at the tragic stories that have been happening in South Africa before the lockdown or before COVID-19, where we had multiple women who went to report rape cases and only to be laughed at, or rather only to be raped again by the police, and most of those policemen were never held accountable, right? So now we have the right tools, which is not necessarily enough, because it's a different story for someone who does not have a phone with a camera, right? But the tools that we have now is just using your phone to record everything that the police are doing, and then later, holding them accountable. That is the only tool that we have available currently, because it is quite problematic, especially if you're going to be reporting a corrupt policeman in your own region at the very same police station that he works in, because now people don't even take you seriously. Because I think it's also problematic that people abuse their power, especially when they are in some sort of leadership position. They tend to abuse their power quite a lot, and unfortunately, we don't have the right resources to actually address that problem currently. But recording with your phone is the best tool that anyone can ever have.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you any more, because the thing is with me about South African police is that they really do behave as though they are above the law, and then the sad thing is that the people they don't know that they have the rights to do these things, for them to protect themselves and also to expose the misconduct and the misbehavior of the policemen. So we need to actually have a movement, a huge movement in South Africa that reminds people's rights, reminds people of their rights, because really people don't know their rights. So we don't have enough time, Pramila. So if you have literally a minute to say something, please do so. Other than that, I'm very, very grateful that you guys made the time to be here with us today on the show. And I will call on you guys again at some point, because these issues are not going to end today. So it is a very these are very huge and important issues that we have globally. And I think we are one as a world. What the issues that we have in America here, we have them in South Africa, and the issues you guys have in South Africa, we have it here. The more we expose of these issues around the world that we all have and how we plan to solve them, the better, I think. And the more we stand as a one world, the better as well. So I want to thank you, Isabella, again. But if Pramila, let me know if you have something to say, and then if you don't, I think, do you have anything else to say?
I'll let Pramila go first, and then I can add anything else. But just thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking your time to join us.
Are you good?